Hello, everyone. Hello again. Welcome back to Phonetics 2. We are going to continue with a installation, more of a continuation of what we have already seen with General American English. So I have my brochure open. I am now on page 23, and you'll notice that here we have part 2, page 23, presented as Introduction to General American 2, part 2 of 2. So we've already seen what we call this rhotic R, right? We've already seen that. And what page is this on again? That is, I think, a few chapters before. I have to find that. Just a reminder of what page that is. That is on page. I can't find it. We'll get there. It was fairly early on. Maybe in lesson 4. Getting there. Come on. Well, that was a little ambitious. Usually I find this right away. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's on page 18 I thought it was farther before, is our introduction to General American, and that was all about the rhotic R, the fact that when we have R's that occur after a vowel, obviously they are not, these R's are not pronounced in British English, or RP, received pronunciation. And whereas in American English they are, you're all familiar with the fact that and a British English speaker is going to say wool, and an American speaker will say war. And we saw the different ways that occurred. Noted this was a sort of review of what we call the centering diphthongs, right? Right? The three centering diphthongs, and then we saw these sort of the way that the R kind of takes over the vowel, like when I say h, or that could be the stressed or the non-stressed version. So we try to divide that sort of into different cases. Right, there were sort of like these 3 cases. So you can review that if you like. But now we're going to move on, and we're going to look at other aspects. And these are similarly, most of these concern vowels. So if you look here, we're on page 23. We'll see that the first 3 are about vowel pronunciation, and then the last one, the 4th one, is going to be about the pronunciation of consonants. So we'll start with the first one, which has to do with the long value for O, and this is a little bit more observable if we have if we can think of sort of a very I would say a very sort of a formal British speaker that has sort of what is known as sort of heightened received pronunciation, who may say something like oh. And if you're, as you're well aware, because you know your values, our long value for O, right? So now, right, will become in American English, as is indicated in the brochure, O. Instead of the O, it becomes O. O. So I feel like we sort of sound a little bit like meatheads when we say that. We have the O. British English received pronunciation O. American English O. No, O. And this also is accompanied by the jaw being in a different position. No. A sort of a dropping of the jaw. Next one we're going to see is a thing that is the second part. We can see that this concerns the R colored value for A, right? This all, right? Now, usually, right, when we have our study of individual letters, we've seen that, in received pronunciation, here we have our R colored value for A, right? Like ka, right? Okay. So usually, of course, being an R colored value, we expect this to occur in words such as like park, right? So we have a stressed A that is immediately followed by our R, and as we've seen, the English being non-rhotic, this R will not be pronounced, right? But also we've seen that if we have an A, we have the same value, the same R colored value, ah, right? It's pronounced exactly in the same way. If we have an A that is followed by voiceless fricatives except sh, right? Meaning, right? We have right? Followed by the, here I'm doing the sounds, the f sound, right? The, write this again, we have this s sound, right? The th sound, right? Okay, so I can say, for example, daft, right? The past and a path, right? So, and we've seen this before, and this is sort of when you're learning, and once again, this is something that is really more a part of, you know, I would say not quite a heightened received pronunciation, but this is fairly, there are a lot of dialects, by the way, in British English where this won't be pronounced. For a lot of the northern dialects are Cockney, but in sort of proper, you know, the Queen's English, we're going to say, oh, the past, right? Okay, right? So this, and by the way, this is something that actually came into existence in the 19th century. This will help you sort of understand why it doesn't occur in American English. This came into existence in the 19th century, sort of with the rising middle classes, right? Before this didn't exist. In the 19th century, this came, and it's sort of a part of class distinction, so a way for the rising middle classes to sort of distinguish themselves from the lower classes. And they, you know, people began to say the past, right? Right? And so this is specific to sort of what's happening, you know, in the class struggle in England, right? And not in the U.S., right? So in the U.S., this just never occurred, right? So we're gonna have just simply the short value. This is we would expect the short value, you know, daft, right? The past, the past, right? The path, right? The path, right? So that's it. That's that. That's the number 2. So yes. Next one we're going to see is a difference in pronunciation for the short value for O, right? And this is more sort of pronounced. It depends really on the area. Here we have the and this you might see variations for this, but we do have this what we think of as the the R-colored value for A. Like if I say something like, whereas in general American, right, we have this as right? I can say got, you know, pot, right? We have sort of a longer A. Sometimes you might also in other, if you use other transcription dictionaries, you might also find this, which is, by the way, I would say the long value for other, looks like the R-colored value for O without the diacritic. You can also find that for the short value for O, right? So we'll say something like pot, right? And some people are going to write it like pot, like the right? It's a little bit of a variation that depends on the speaker. And those two possibilities are given in the brochure. So that just concerns the short value for O, right? So those are those first 3. Once again, they are relevant for vowels, and there is a 4th variation, which has to do with consonants. Now this only concerns T's that are in the intermediary position, so that are kind of separating 2 vowels. And so one example could be something like we have the word you know, butter, right? And this is, by the way, something this does not happen all the time. It depends a little bit on the speaker, the social origins of the speaker, and if they're speaking in a sort of in a more or less formal setting. If I'm an American speaker, I'm speaking in a formal setting, I'll say butter. I'll butter. If I'm really paying attention to how I'm speaking, I might pronounce this still as a T, right? Okay, and that's the way it is in British English, but you'll hear it as a D, right? And beware that this butter. This is actually a special kind of a D sound that is indicated by this symbol, right? Because if you remember in the consonant chart, right, you notice that T and D, right, are alveolars. You're having your tooth. That means your tooth is sort of very forward, and it will be just behind your upper teeth, right? The d, right? But in this, notice we have it in the same place as the d. Instead of your tongue sort of poking forward, right above where your front teeth are, it will actually kind of be spread out in a lateral position, and you kind of brush what is known as the alveolar ridge. You kind of hike your tongue back really quickly. So butter. So if you notice your tongue does not go forward, it kind of brushes backwards. And notice it's a very quick motion, and it's explained by that is why this only occurs in that intermediary position. So instead of saying butter, we're going to say butter, right? And this is a thing where British people are very often going to make fun of American speakers because they think, why do they pronounce these D's where they should say T? So a very proper, British native speaker is going to say, oh, butter, right? Whereas an American person is going to say butter, 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 and you hear the D. And so that's what this symbol, it looks like an R, right? But it's a specific kind of, I would say, D sound, right? That is produced not with the tongue stopping in the alveolar position, but instead of what is known as flapping, sort of brushing the whole arc of the alveolar ridge, which you can kind of think of by just hiking. If you do it, you'll kind of feel your tongue kind of smacking backward, right? It sort of taps the whole breadth of the alveolar ridge. So that is our little once again another installment. Second part about the specificity of General American. So, commit that to memory. I would work on transcription. I would transcribe on page 23. You have those 5 sentences. This bottle, there's a lot to say. This bottled water, up until the 5th one on the next page, 24. Sometimes it's better not to look for mitigating circumstances. I would suggest transcribing those in received pronunciation, and then try to determine the places where there is a difference with American English. Great. Thank you. I will include other I'm going to in the email that you have received this week, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to mention what things about evaluation. Obviously we have to adjust because you can't come. But what was already projected was the fact that you were going to do some oral production, right? And so we are going to do that by you. I'm going to ask you to send in a recording using your phone. I want to make it a video image. I want to see you do this, right? I'm going to ask you to record a few. I'm going to send you the links to sentences. Actually, what I think the ones I will ask you to do will be these very same ones. Do it as naturally as you can, either in these same sentences on page 23 and 24. If you can read those 5 sentences, the ones that we've just seen starting on page 23 and 24. For next week, if you could send me next week those 5 sentences, paying attention, take your time, do this very slowly, right? Try to really either you can pronounce these either the British way or the American way. That's no problem at all. Whatever is most natural to you, that won't be, there's no good or bad way to do this. And once again, really try to pay attention to those vowel values. Really try to, and once again, I would advise you determining the stress pattern of these words, to really, taking pains to make that syllable that receives primary stress, make it really stick out, right? And even if your English isn't perhaps completely natural, if you're able to do that, that'll really make that word kind of extremely clear, and it will make it kind of be very concise and very kind of, I would say, kind of vividly. You can hear it really in a distinct way. You can hear it vividly. So just think of this exercise, and you'll be evaluated on this. This will be sort of part of your evaluation. We're going to do this for next week, and we'll do this towards the very end of the semester on week 12. So I'll have 2 of these. And obviously, I'll be looking forward to observing progress. But do that for next week. That is your assignment that you will be evaluated on. So take care.